That's perfect.
That is good.
Okay.
It's funny that we're going to be talking about technology today, because I've been messing around with a number of ways to make this happen a little better. My video here is sort of crappy, but not the worst thing in the world. But it's off of a laptop. So what I was going to do was show you the laptop, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I need another camera to do that. And I had set myself up earlier, which you should never do. I guess the first lesson in technology is don't wait till the last minute to try and test everything out. I was using my DSLR as a webcam. And you can do that. It's going to take me another 20 minutes or so to figure it out before doing it. And I started at about quarter of. So that's not something I'm going to be able to do today. But the cool thing with that is you can remotely control the camera through the laptop, have a much better photo, because right now I made sure I had a lot of light coming in, and I made sure that I'm close to the computer, and that I'm using a separate sound mic to capture my voice, so we're not getting any feedback. But in addition to doing all that, you don't want to make the video something that people don't want to look at. So that's my quick soapbox at the start to warn you about technology not always being the savior.
Right,
So.
you're right. Understood. And we're listening to you through our laptops, mics, and speakers, and I was expecting to do it through broadcast speakers, but I didn't test it out earlier either. So we're both going to just use what we've got, and I think it's going to be perfect. So we're glad you're here, and we'll start by introducing ourselves. Or Ms. Yoder, how do we have the first question?
I'll just start. Hi, I'm Mrs. Yoder, and this is Jane Yoder, and this is my 10th grade English class.
Hi, guys.
Thanks for taking time out to talk to us.
You're quite
I'm just going to have the students just come up one by one and ask you a few questions, and then you can add anything you want to add at the end.
Perfect. That'll work great.
Okay, thank you. Leah.
Hello.
Hi.
How do personal ethics govern your professional decisions?
Personal ethics, I think, tie in directly to professional ethics once you figure out your profession. So as a journalist, I look at the ethics of the profession, but I also think about how I'd respond. So I guess a better example, or a better way to say that, is if I'm going to do a story on someone, I try and empathize with how they're going to respond to the story, depending on how it's going to show up, and also the questions that I'm asking them. I try and put myself in their shoes and try to think, well, is this appropriate for me to be asking of this person at this time, and how would I respond? Would this feel like a proper thing if roles were reversed? In a greater circumstance, if you look at a broader perspective, I just try to be a good person. So from a personal standpoint, if I'm a good person, I can sort of let my internal barometer guide me in stories that I'm reporting, and the truth that I'm putting on paper, and the people I'm dealing with. I'm just trying to be fair, because if you deal with people fairly, they're most likely going to deal with you the same way. So I don't know, I think it's born out from experience, because when you get along a little ways into the job of a journalist or the job of any writer, you don't think about the ethics specifically. You don't really focus on them unless there are rulings based on ethics violations that someone else has come into. But you get a feel for what's right and what's wrong, and anything that sets off a little bell in your mind that might not be appropriate. That's your first warning. I mean, when you get a bad vibe about a person, you don't sit there and think, oh wow, I was consciously thinking that this person could be bad. You just got a bad vibe. So if you get a bad vibe about a circumstance or a situation, that's usually your ethics barometer going off.
Okay. Can a person still make a good living as a journalist?
I think so, but I think the whole field of journalism is changing. What I'm looking at now is the new form of journalism. So in the class there, everyone's probably got a cell phone. Not in the class and on, but you probably have a cell phone somewhere. And what you can do with the cell phone, a smartphone, or even the laptop is find out regular news. You can find out a sports score, you can find out the weather, you can find out news about a fire or a crash or something like that. That's instant, that's free, it's everywhere. But the new form of journalism is going to be more like magazines. So it's a deeper type of reporting where the stories that you tell are going to let you really know who the people are, what the situations are, and the analysis behind a story. So instead of reporting that it snowed today in Indianapolis or whatever weather story you might report, the story behind that might go deeper into global circumstances and what the weather is like all over the world and why it snowed on that day in that area. Or maybe you talk about how weather affects certain industries in the area. Maybe there's a snow tire salesman who is experiencing his best quarter ever because of the weather. So you're going deeper. I think you can still make a living as a journalist. You just are going to have to work a little harder and be a lot more creative about the stories that you chase down. The one other thing that I'd talk about, especially because we're looking at technology a little bit today, is that if you learn how to use social tools and new media tools and other techniques to reach different people, you're never going to be at a loss for finding stories, because over on Facebook, over on Twitter, or Google Plus, or forums online, anywhere, you're going to be able to find a source for any story. If what I just gave is a crazy example of a snow tire salesman in Indianapolis is any indication, you could go on right now and Google those terms, probably find half a dozen people who sell snow tires in the Indianapolis area, and suddenly you have 6 sources for that same story, which may or may not resonate with a ton of readers, but the additional new form of journalism is very personal journalism. You may only get half the readers or a quarter of the readers that you would have had in the past, but those people are very dedicated to the story. They're very interested and have an affinity for exactly what you're reporting on. So it's going to be very niche focused going forward too.
You touched on this a little bit, but how has technology changed journalism?
I think it's changed journalism in the speed with which everyone rushes to get a story out, and I don't know if that's always a good thing. The best example is probably political races, when everyone's always forecasting who's won a certain race. Or you can look at the Super Bowl. What happened to the Giants, even though they won, what happened to the Giants the day before the Super Bowl or 2 days before the Super Bowl was that their website was revealed. Someone had opened their website somehow or hacked in, or someone who was coding it just let it go live, and it showed that they had already predicted that they won, and they had the whole page set up on their home site just saying Giants world champions and everything. And that, not as a journalism thing, but just as a technology faux pas right there, people are already ahead of the game. They already want to tell you the story that hasn't even happened yet. And I think that is something that journalists have to be very careful of, because there is that enticement to be the first one with a story, but being first isn't always the best, even though large news outlets measure it that way, because they think if we're first with the story, we're going to sell the most papers, we're going to get the most views. I think good journalists want to get the correct story, not the first story.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
What type of work in journalism do you personally do?
It runs the gamut, because right now I'm writing for online publications. I'm also writing for print publications, and I'm doing some radio work. So, I mean, if I look even further back, I wrote for cable TV. So what it really comes down to is knowing how to tell a story.
Pause. Now that could mean either our connection dropped or you still there.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, go ahead.
What I was saying is that I run the gamut from a lot of different types of outlets, being print or online or radio, and I had done cable in the past. But what it comes down to from a skill set is just knowing how to tell a story and knowing how to write. So if you can tell a story and write about it quickly, it doesn't matter what channel or what media you're sending stuff out into, as long as you have those skills. I think the biggest skill that a lot of people take for granted is the skill to do interviews, and do interviews once you go beyond the set 5 or 10 questions that you have for someone, and ask follow-up questions and intelligent follow-up questions to find out more of a story. But right now I'm pretty much doing a lot. I'm doing some blogging as well, but that's a totally different beast.
In what aspect of your job do you use technology?
I think everything. If I go out today and interview someone, well, hold on. One of the things that I do is a lot of technology reporting. So I have people who send me gadgets. I don't know if you can see what that is. These are e-gloves. And so they sent me a whole stack of these gloves to go try out. So what these gloves do is allow you to use your smartphone or any touchpad device in the cold. So you wear the gloves, but they have the, I don't know what it is, the technology within the gloves to allow you to use them wherever you are. So you pull the gadget out, but keep the gloves on and you can use it. Well, not that type of technology, but the technology that ties into telling that story I use all the time. So I can file a report from my iPhone, or I can bring the laptop wherever I am and write stories from conferences or from meetings. I can do, and have done, a lot of recordings of both video and audio, just using different technology. I don't think that's going away. I think what people get caught up in is thinking, oh, something with a cable and electrons and circuit boards and chips is the definition of technology. And what I would say to them is that a pen and paper was technology when it was first invented, and that's still a fantastic technology if you're on the road and need to take some notes. So I think the answer is we all use technology. I just think we label it differently.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
What are a few of the most important skills a journalist needs to be successful?
Interviewing, as I touched on before, interviewing is very important. It's probably one of the most important. The skill to listen, and a lot of people don't think about this, because when you first start out, if you go cover a meeting, and I don't know if in this class you have to go interview people or cover different events as assignments, but people are very, as a whole, people are very concerned about filling dead air. They don't want any silence to exist, and it gets very uncomfortable for there to be nothing said in certain periods of time. And one of the great tools that a journalist can use is the ability to sit there silently and wait for someone to just continue talking and continue to fill that air. Some of the best quotes and the biggest stories were probably broken by journalists who had that skill, because what they do is just sit there and nod and just wait for their interview subject to fill that air, because they're gonna just feel uncomfortable. And it seems like a trick, and it seems like it's a little devious, but you want them to tell you everything that they're going to tell you, and they're not going to open up unless they start to feel a little uneasy and want to fill that dead air. The other skills that I think you need are the ability to write or type quickly, the ability to accurately hear quotes and put them down, the ability to meet deadlines, and I mean, the writing quickly thing is just huge. When I started my career, I was writing for a cable network, and they were not on the air 24 hours a day. They'd go off the air for 12 hours every day. So they'd go off at 2:30 in the morning and come back on at 2:30 in the afternoon. What I would have to do the night before, I'd go into the studio at 6:30 at night, stay there till about 2:30 in the morning, and I would write 150 news stories every night. And they weren't long. They were only, I mean, they were blog form, even before blogs. They were just 2-paragraph stories. But I had to write 150 of them, and that trains you to really write quickly on a bunch of different topics. So what I would suggest is just practicing that form, practicing getting stories done in an accurate and complete manner. So if you can tell a whole story in 3 paragraphs, go do that, and do that as frequently as you can. Writing quickly can't be emphasized enough, because if you can write quickly, you can do more work, and as a journalist, the more stories you file, the more money you make.
What obstacles have you had to overcome as a journalist?
I think as journalists, we're running into the biggest obstacle we've ever faced right now, because everyone believes that if they can carry a flip cam, they can be a journalist. And the term citizen journalist has come up in the past 2 years more frequently than ever, and I contend that it's not citizen journalist, it should be citizen reporter, or just reporter. Because if someone has a flip cam, that's no different than you tying the camera to your cat's collar and letting the cat go around and record stuff. No, seriously. Because if you don't have the training of a journalist, if you don't have that knowledge of ethics and the ability to interview and the skill set to write quickly and completely, then you're no more skilled than the cat with the camera. And that's the trouble. Is a lot of people think, oh, I can be a journalist because I can just attend this event and do the same reporting that reporters do. And I think anyone can do reporting, but not everyone can do journalism. It requires some analysis and requires some thought and some direction. You need to know who your audience is and what story you're writing for that audience, and also how they're going to respond. I'm going to write a different story for the folks who read my automotive. I write for Automotive Rhythms. That's one of the publications I write for. But when I write a story for them on a new Hyundai or the Fiat 500, that's going to be a totally different story than if I write about those same 2 vehicles for a technology magazine, or the same 2 vehicles for a lifestyle magazine. So I might write about how the Fiat 500 it's a cute little car, but it's not a family vehicle for a lifestyle publication. But for the automotive magazine, I'll write about how quick it is and how it responds and how it drives. And for the technology one, I'll talk about the gadgets and everything that's included and the safety. And it's just an awareness that journalists have to have. And I think overcoming the belief that anyone can do your job is pretty difficult. One of the other things I say when people talk about citizen journalists is that if they are so of the belief that anyone can be a journalist, well, then we should start bringing up the terms citizen architect, citizen dentist, citizen plumber, any of those things. So,
how do you expect journalism will change over the next 10 years?
I think it'll become very individualized. I think that every journalist out there, and I think you guys have a head start because you're not out there working yet, but I think what will happen is that every journalist will become their own brand, and they'll become their own news outlet. Because right now, I showed you some gadgets I have here. I'm a walk-in newsroom, essentially, and more so because I'm a freelancer and I work for so many different publications. But I think the entire industry will go in that direction, so that everyone will file their stories to whatever outlet will buy it. Instead of being a career journalist at the New York Times or the Boston Globe or wherever, you're going to be a journalist in a certain segment of the market, and you'll specialize in that and be the person that people turn to report on certain stories, but everyone will turn to you and bid for your services. And I've seen some of that happen already. A little while back, it was 2 years ago, the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. An environmental company hired me because they weren't happy with the stories that CBS and NBC and ABC were sending from the Gulf. And this environmental company called me up and they said, well, you're a journalist, what do you write about? And I said, technology, but I can write about anything. I mean, that's the skill set. If you're a journalist, it just requires doing some interviews and doing some reporting. You can report on any topic. So they said, all right, we're sending you to the Gulf. And I was like, really? And they said, yeah. So they paid me a bucket of money and sent me down there for 2 weeks to go down and report on the oil spill and take a focus more on the environmental impact and the stuff that wasn't being reported. So I got to go down there and have a really cool adventure reporting on stuff I really hadn't reported on before, but it was the same skill set. So becoming your own mobile newsroom is really where things are headed. I would encourage all of you, if you don't already have your own name as a domain name, I'd go get that. And I would set yourself up online with some forethought to creating yourself as a brand, if that's what you're looking to do, is be in this field.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
What should students concentrate in high school to be prepared?
I think communication skills, no matter where they are. So if there are some AV classes or film classes and you think that you might want to be in broadcast, go concentrate on those. I think English and other language skills are really important, just because if you're communicating with the world, you want to speak everyone's language. So learn as many languages as you can, but also learn how to be accurate and correct in your grammar, your spelling, and all skills that come along with communicating, regardless of whatever language you're communicating in. Those are the big things.
I personally enjoy writing about the most.
About the...
Louder.
What do you personally enjoy writing about the most?
Oh, okay. I actually like writing about technology a lot, only because they send me, as I showed you before, the gloves, but people send me gadgets to put through their paces. And one of the items I'm playing with now are cell phone cases. So there's a company that sends me iPhone cases all the time, and I get to try a different case like once a month just to see what's out there. So I get to see the new toys before they're on the market, which that's kind of cool. The other thing I like doing a lot of reporting on, but it's not really a paid thing, so maybe that's an indicator that I really like it, is my food blogging. I do a lot of food and restaurant reviews, and essentially it's paid because they don't charge you for the food, but I just like that because I get to eat nice places and try different food and learn about different things in the region, and also become a resource for people who are like, well, what's this restaurant like, or what's that food like? So I enjoy doing that. And then maybe the other thing I like the most is reporting on some sports stuff. I try to go over to Paris to report on the Tour de France when I can do that. And I don't know, that's about it. It runs the gamut. I think the biggest thing I like about being a freelancer and a journalist is that I have the choice to do a variety of different things. And going back to the question we had earlier, I think that's also how journalism is going to change, because the specialists are still going to have their avenue for growth and their future because they're going to know one certain topic. But I think there's going to be a bigger opportunity for people who can report on anything, because they'll be more versatile and they'll have a variety of work all the time.
Can I have have a pause for just like 5 seconds. We have some students who have to leave, but there's a few who want to stay.
Okay,
so
sure.
It's go then. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Thanks, guys. I'll be right here.
Thank you, Jeff. This is great.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Just wait right out. That's the work.
You did a good job. You did a good job. We very good.
Unless you guys can come back around here.
Picture.
Hello.
Hi.
Why did you choose journalism?
I think I was always enthralled with writing and telling stories, and I had worked on the school paper in high school and worked on the paper in college. But actually in college I wasn't a journalism major until later on. So I think I chose it just because I finally figured out that, wow, this is something I'm good at and it doesn't seem like a lot of work, which I think is the way that a lot of people determine what they really like to do in life. If it doesn't seem like work, but you can still make money doing it, then it's almost a no-brainer that, wow, why not just do that? Because if you can have fun and make money, that's the best of both worlds.
What is the most exciting thing about journalism?
I think the power and the access. No, seriously, because journalists won't tell you this or most journalists won't tell you this, but there really is a little bit of a high to be that person that gets to go inside the ropes at a PGA tournament, or the person who gets to go under the police line and go see a fire or see some crime scene. And that's not something the general public can do, and I think that's also why a lot of journalists get themselves all worked up when people talk about anyone being able to report the news. Because if you're one of a select few who are allowed in to report a story, be it at an auto show or a technology conference or a music festival or whatever that event may be, if you're allowed special access, that's a power thing. That's kind of cool because people are paying attention to your skill set and what you're bringing to the table. So that might be the most exciting thing. I think a lot of journalists won't come up with that as their first choice, but I would, because it never gets old, being able to go talk to an elected official, whereas they won't give anyone else the time of day. So you do have that little power.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one I want to ask.
Yeah.
You guys got to do one. I just wondered if you could give us some ideas on avenues to how to get where you are today.
Depending on... No, go ahead.
Just starting with high school to where you are today.
First thing is look at the school paper, the school publications. I would write for those because anyone who's running those is always looking for people who can write and who can contribute different perspectives and good information. I would then look towards community papers. Depending on your location, I think Patch is doing a lot of freelance writing and they pay. There are also community papers within a lot of towns who they're frankly understaffed. They usually just have one editor who has to write all the stories for the paper and frequently just take stories in from any contributors, which is a good and a bad thing. It's a bad thing because the quality of the paper suffers because they'll take anything, but the good thing is, in terms of experience and getting some clips at the level you guys are at, it makes some sense to start seeing your name in print, because once you have your name in print a few places, you can go elsewhere and say, here, I've had this stuff published, I'd like to write for you as well. The other thing to think about is what specific knowledge do each of you bring to the table? So if you're a lacrosse player and you know a great deal about the sport, or if you're into cooking and you know a ton about that profession and can write passionately about that, or you have a unique perspective about a family business, or anything that you're the only one, you're the person to tell that story, that's something that news outlets are going to be interested in, because they like to get that individualized perspective and the inside track on different stories. And that's a fantastic way to pitch yourself in the specialized area. I know I talked before about, is that my feedback or?
No, you're okay. That was our bell schedule.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I know I talked before about people having the strength of doing a variety and being able to report on a lot of stuff. But right now, if you can specialize on something, you could be that expert in that area. So people will then look to you to write about that, and that gives you that unique inroad to any publication that's looking for something like that. In both high school and college, I wrote columns that were a little more comedic in nature than a lot of other people were able to do. So I could write about any topic as long as I wrote about it in a humorous fashion, because it was a style of writing they didn't have in the paper. And I don't think that I looked at that and made a conscious decision to do that. I just knew that's what I like to write, and it just happened that nobody else was writing about that. So if nobody's writing about healthy lunches to take to school, or healthy lunches you can make at home, or I don't know, just whatever topics are being talked about by all the kids in school, I would assume that that right there is your audience. So if everyone's talking about something but nobody's writing about it, that might be your next target to write about.
Do you recommend a college major in journalism or communications, or is that still necessary for writing, or do you think not?
I think as long as you're strong and really strong in writing, storytelling, and your grammar and your understanding of language, you can really go in a bunch of different directions. I certainly didn't lock myself into a journalism degree right off the bat. I went into school thinking I wanted to be a political science major because I like some politics stuff, and I just wanted to learn more about that field. But I switched quickly from there into business because I thought, business, that's where you make money. So I just switched over, and I was a finance major for about 2 years. And then I thought, well, this is really hard, and there's a lot of math, and it's boring. And I didn't think that's what I wanted to do. And the whole time I had been writing for the school paper, and I was doing a lot of writing on my own. And I thought, well, I know how to do this other stuff, so why don't I? And I switched over to a journalism major and graduated with that. So there are different paths that a lot of people take. I think knowing history is very important. I think that might be the place I'm most lacking. I'm pretty weak in my historical knowledge, and that's something I wish I paid a little more attention to going forward, just because if you know what's happened before, it makes your research of different things easier, and it allows you to relate to people a lot easier because you know different backgrounds, different events. I think learning a lot of different things is a better track to take than just locking into communications right off the bat. I know it's difficult because at this stage you're starting to think about what colleges you want to go to, and certain colleges are certainly journalism schools are not journalism schools, and some schools are known for different programs and others are known for others. But I think just a strong education across the board will help you, as well as knowing how to interview and knowing how to write.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you guys have any other questions? I could sit here and chat all day. I think everything has been very interesting to me. So,
well, thank you.
I really appreciate you taking time, and you might hear a few more questions by email from me personally.
No, if you have any more coming in, just group them together, throw them in an email, and I'll answer them.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye.